Welcome in, everybody. Happy Tuesday night. Welcome to the Tuesday on Texas Football live stream. Aaron Hogan, Rod Babers, CJ Vogel. It's a busy night of Longhorn sports. We got UT baseball playing St. John's right now. We're keeping an eye on that on LHN. And then, of course, tonight at 8 o'clock out in Lubbock, Longhorns play their final basketball game as a Big 12 member out in Lubbock tonight. They're an underdog, and this is a big game for the Longhorns. We'll talk some of that. I got some thoughts on the Longhorns playing that final game and where we are. We're 125 days away today, guys, from Texas joining the Southeast Conference. 125 days today, if you're counting. We're 3 weeks from tomorrow to the opening of spring practice. So we'll talk some spring practice, spring football. And the NFL Scouting Combine is, as far as the on-field drills, begins on Thursday, but there's already action coming from their general managers, at the podiums today. A lot of interviews, a lot of sound coming out of Indianapolis as everybody gathers. So we'll certainly talk about the 11 Longhorns that are going to the biggest job interview of their lives as far as off to the NFL. Let's start tonight with you, Rod. You went to the Combine many, many years ago, I don't want to make you sound old, Rod, but a couple of decades ago now.
It's true. I am old.
Combine. It is as we talked about, it's an environment that most of our audience here, and we appreciate everybody being there, will take your questions. Can never really understand how this works. And, as you said, you don't have an agent. You're kind of in purgatory, between your college years and then who's going to draft you come April. Take us back to you a couple decades ago. It's an uncertain time. You're just trying to do your best, but man, more questions than answers when you walk into Indianapolis, I have to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Combine's about. It's answering questions, right? Everybody's got questions related to the evaluation, their skill set, with how they project, how their game translates to the NFL level. And the Combine is about answering questions. Now, more and more, it's become a TV show. It wasn't a TV show when I went. So now the cameras it's more sanitized now with the cameras than it was back in the day. It's about a lot more progressive and modernized. Back when there were no cameras, it was a savage meat market. That's just the reality of it. And they ushered you through, and it's a pressure cooker, right? They want to see how you're going to perform under pressure. When you're talking about the hustle and bustle of the medical examinations, where you got multiple teams and multiple doctors examining you at the same time, feels like you've been abducted by aliens. You got 4-5 doctors poking and prying in different parts of your body, revealing injuries to you that you didn't even know you had. Going back to injuries that you might have sustained as a kid in middle school. I mean, they get deep into it. And you got to do that multiple times, by the way. They got multiple groups of medical evaluations, and they all want their own independent diagnosis or evaluation of a player. So if you got a lot of injuries, and I can't even imagine what a Jay Witt's going through. Hell, I was in there for a while. I can't imagine what a Jay Witt's got to go through. His whole damn day might be devoted to just medical evaluations. So they're thorough there, but it's designed to agitate. It's designed to put you under pressure. It's designed to make you tired. Right, CJ, you talked to you say that you got a chance to talk to somebody who went to the Combine. They told you they don't let you see the outside. Like they got to lock you down like that. That's on purpose too. They don't want you to. They're not trying to get you to go out and relax and have perspective and be able to contextualize what's going on. No, they want you in the pressure cooker constantly, day to day. There's a different task, and that's why they put the testing last. By the way, that's the fourth quarter. It's intentional. Interviews first, medical evaluations first, testing last. The thing, by the way, that you've been working on the most up until the Combine, they do it last. That's their version of the fourth quarter. All right, let's see, after we put this guy through the pressure cooker, after we've agitated them, and after we poked and prodded them, and then we've insulted them probably and poked at their pride a little bit in these interviews and been very invasive in that sense. Let's see how you actually perform under pressure, consistent pressure. And that's what the Combine is based on. Like I said, now it's a little bit of a TV show, so it's different, but they want to see if you can perform under pressure. Whether that's man, they had me rooming with an Aggie. They do that on purpose. Like, that stuff is done on purpose in my experience, it was, they put you in alphabetical order, by the way, and you run all your drills. That's what it was done when I played. I was actually number 2 because I was behind number 1, which is Nandi Asamoah, who was a first round pick. I told ZJ this, man. He was a grown man out there. That dude was a freak. Drafted in the first round. I think right now he's an actor, and he married Kerry Washington, so he's a baller. and he's a, a player. So this dude was an alpha male, and I had to go after him. So it might, I believe that actually distorted my combine a little bit, having to go behind a freak, but it helped me because I knew I had to raise my level at the combine. I had an incident where I had my webbing in my hand got split. I was catching because the quarterbacks back in that day, they were throwing the drills, some of the QBs, and of course they're all trying to show out. Everybody's trying to show out. So they're throwing the ball like that. You can tell the velocity, the velo on this thing. I mean, it's like some major league pitcher stuff. You can hear the ball humming through the air. So it hit the ball hit my hand the wrong plot and split the webbing in my fingers. I had to go get stitches to come back in, but the coaches on my way out, man, they heckled me. I mean, they said to with their Babers is not coming back out. Oh man, Babers is soft, man. Look at him going back in the locker room. And I was like, nah, man, my hand's bleeding. I've been told by the guy here, the official, that I need to leave and I could go get it taken care of. And I got the stitches, came back out, and got back into the drills. Got a semi applause when I walked back out there from coaches. The coaches are in the stands. The scouts are in the stands, and they're having a good time. I don't know what everybody else tell. I know there's some business being done, but they're having a good time there. And they're, like I said, they used to be wilder. Now they're probably a lot more reserved than they used to be. But back in my day, it was a wild scene, man. It was a wild scene. So I think it's the most absurd and probably the most unorthodox, strange interview job interview that anybody can go on. Maybe if you interview to be a CIA agent or an FBI agent, maybe the interview would be as bizarre. But it is a bizarre interview process, to say the least.
Great stuff, Rod. And yeah, having been to Indianapolis, I've done radio shows there from the Radio Row they have set up, and it's good stuff. But as you say, I mean, because Indianapolis, you can get anywhere without going outside. You can go through an above ground tunnel. They have below ground tunnels, just kind of built to connect downtown, the convention center, Lucas Oil Stadium, the hotels. So you never really have to go out. To your point, CJ, that you never keep everybody in a bubble. It's almost like a science fiction movie or something where hotel to the field to the interviews back. And as Rod said, you got people poking and prodding you. That's especially you're leaving college, going off to the NFL where you don't know where you're going to be drafted. You have no idea. Someone's going to take you and you got to go move there. I think everybody goes through struggles coming out of school and their next step. That's really unlike any other dealing with that 4 days in Indianapolis.
Yeah. Yeah, and for some, it might be an entire career in Indianapolis. If you look at Sam Ehlinger, who ended up there, it's interesting. My favorite thing about the combine is you start hearing the snippets from reporters that cover the NFL. Some of those leaks of executive scouts, coaches that kind of have an affinity, or they start liking certain prospects at the combine. That's really when you start hearing it for the first time. I guess for guys that aren't in that first top 3, top 4 pick selection area, but when you start looking at it, it's always fun to start hearing where guys are, mocked to go and what teams are really starting to take a liking to them. And then comparing what they've done in the past with Texas players, you look at teams like Seattle and Baltimore. I mean, they have so many Longhorns on their roster at the moment, or at least did over the last couple of years. It wouldn't be a surprise to see, a number of these guys potentially picked by either of them. We've talked about Byron Murphy potentially going to Seattle at 16. I actually thought T'Vondre Sweat to Baltimore at 62 made a lot of sense, but it's cool because you start seeing the trends of, Texas didn't necessarily perform very well in the field over the last decade, but these coaches and front offices know that there's a lot of talent in Austin. And now that, the winning and everything that's come along with Sarkisian's arrival here has kind of taken the cat out of the bag for what that means with the NFL scouts knowing that they can kind of go get a steal from Texas later in the draft. So those guys aren't going to be hidden a little bit anymore as a result of this. And as we talked about, Rod, with all the mock drafts, the Daniel Jeremiahs, the Matt Millers of the world, 5 or 6 projected Longhorns going in the first 2 rounds is certainly exciting. So I'm excited to see where they fall. We'll have a little bit longer to see exactly where that is, but the combine should give you a little bit of detail and information behind the scenes of, who's really starting to like who when it comes to the prospects.
I think most of the Longhorns will increase their draft stock at the combine. I do. I think Byron Murphy, whether you're looking at Dane Brugler's, list of players he most wants to watch that he thinks are going to be freakish at the combine, or you're talking about Bruce Feldman's most freakish college football players overall athletically. I mean, Byron Murphy is listed, and there's expectation that Byron Murphy is going to put on a show at the combine. A guy with great feet. He claims he's the strongest person on the Texas football team, whether you're talking about squatting or you're talking about benching or power cleaning. That's that dude's, and I think he's been clocked at 18 miles per hour on the GPS trackers. I mean, that dude he's a freak, and I think at the combine he's going to increase his draft stock. That's at least the belief. I think A.D. Mitchell's going to run fast because A.D. Mitchell knows he's only got one task, just to run fast. If he can run a fast 40, which you can train as an elite athlete, you can train yourself to run a faster 40. If he just runs a fast 40, anywhere low 4.5 to high 4.4, I think he's going to get first round consideration and increasing his draft stock. JT Sanders, if JT Sanders can somehow basically prove that his athletic profile is anywhere in the neighborhood of Brock Bowers, just some of the the drills and the timing, if it's anywhere near Brock Bowers, who is far and away considered a generational prospect at tight end, it'll make some GMs think twice and go, whoa, I got to go back to the film on JT Sanders. Maybe he is more of a freakish athlete than I thought. And, you're talking about 5-star athletes coming out of high school. Hell, you only got a few of those guys around the country. And I think he does have those kind of freakish, raw measurables that he could showcase. So if he runs a fast 40, if he has a good 5.10.5, has a great vert, and then they start comparing Brock Bowers and JT Sanders' athletic profiles, whoa, man, maybe that's not a Grand Canyon-sized gap between the two, or maybe we should start looking more at JT Sanders. T'Vondre Sweat, you talked about this in your article, CJ. Great stuff to it on TexasFootball.com when you talked about the individual drills and aspects of the combine that are going to help or hurt these Texas prospects. For T'Vondre Sweat, it's pretty simple, too. You got to come in lighter. He comes in between 350 and 355, and then can show out on the bench press and some of the agility drills for a big man. And he's going to look good in the agility drills anyway. When big men move around like that, trust me, man, it's eye-popping. The best athletes at the combine, it is not the little tiny dudes, 180, 185, running 4.4 and 4.3. That is not it. It is the 300-pound dudes out there running 5 flat and 5.1 at 300-something pounds. Them are the freaks. Them the real freaks out there. And I think T'Vondre Sweat can show off some freaky stuff. He's going to look freaky in some of the change of direction stuff, both of those D tackles for Texas. So I just think the Longhorns, a lot of those guys can increase. Xavier Worthy's the one that's kind of tough. It's a deep wide receiver draft. I don't know how much he can increase his draft stock necessarily at the combine. Deep wide receiver, everybody expects him to run fast. If he runs, that's not going to increase his draft stock. I think if he goes through the drills, I don't know how much that's going to push him up. So he may be tougher. Jay Brooks, that's tough too because he's a top running back on the board. Can't work out in interviews. Christian Jones, I don't know how much he's going to do. He's going to impress with his size and his arm length. People are going to like that. We'll see what he does on the bench. But I think like half of this group can really help themselves in terms of increasing their draft stock at the combine.
Yeah, there's talk Byron Murphy could run 4.8 potentially in the 40-yard dash at over 300 pounds. I mean, that's the freaky stuff you're talking about. And it is interesting. We're on Texas football, so we're centric to the Longhorns. But as a longtime draft nerd, I love the process. But each one is such an interesting conversation because they're all different, but they all can, as you just said, Rod, raise their profile here at the combine, not just with the workouts, but the interviews. Then the conversations with coaches and Sark, and these guys were leaders of this team, and each one comes with different a different storyline. It feels like to me, CJ. And I know we're going to cover it all the way to the draft, but Byron Murphy, the motor never stops. This guy is an energy guy. He is everything you want in a 3-down defensive lineman who's, as Rod just said, going to show out in these athletic drills. But they're going to love his energy. He never stops. I mean, this guy is relentless with what he does with the motor. T'Vondre Sweat, I mean, he and Xavier Worthy have the uncoachable, right? You can't coach his size. He just can't. The power, that's a unicorn, right? And with Xavier Worthy, it's the speed. It's the electric legs, man. The guy you can't coach that. You can't teach somebody how to do that. And, I think for X-Man, it's one of those, hey, go back and watch this freshman film when he took the Big 12 by storm. Don't worry about the drops as a sophomore with a broken hand. Let's look at this year. This guy's an impact player since he walked on the field at Texas. A.D. Mitchell, to Rod's point, if he puts a good 40 time up, holy cow! I mean, the film is incredible for him, both back at Georgia and here at Texas with the route running and the it's 6'4", long arms, the ability to make plays in traffic. And then JT Sanders, to me, the two most fascinating are JT and Jonathan Brooks, because they're both at really thin positions as far as this draft goes. Right? They're both sitting. There aren't many tight ends beyond JT and Brock Bowers, as you said, Rod. And there's going to be a team. They know he was a 5-star kid out of Denton. They know he was a big-time talent. They know he didn't really have a position coming in. What was he going to be? Brock Bowers was a tight end when he left California to go to Georgia. Everybody knew it. They had to figure out a position for JT Sanders. So for me, you look at what he's done year 2, year 3, and then project. They know he's an elite athlete, and he's going to be able to show that. So, with the next tight end being way down your list, you wonder if someone snags him and says, you know what, we got to get a hold of this guy. Because as we've talked about and Rod's pointed out many times, look at the teams that made it to the conference championship games. Look at the teams that had the best offenses in pro football this year. Pretty much all of them have elite tight ends. They've got tight ends that are matchup problems. So if you're looking for one of those dudes, JT might be the one guy after Brock Bowers. So he may go earlier. And then Jonathan Brooks, to me, CJ, fascinating, because we've heard that the Cowboys are linked to him a little bit because the surgeon for the Cowboys, their orthopedic, did the surgery on Jonathan Brooks. He knows this injury intimately, so he's been in that knee. He's the number 1 back on the board. And we just saw all the backs that are going to hit the free agent market, including the Cowboys with Tony Pollard, and Rico Dowdle's a free agent. The Texans need a running back. The Raiders, everybody needs running backs. All this is interesting because you think, then you watch the mock drafts or see the mock drafts, and they're all over the place. They're all over the place with these Longhorns. Just fascinating to see how they're going to slot. And it's compelling because you can make an argument for 5 guys to go in the first round. There'll probably only be 2, but to pick which 2 is going to be the difficult part.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a tough science, and there's no exact science behind it, which is why it's so interesting and fun to follow with the number of mock drafts that we see released basically every day. And I'm sure we'll see plenty more following the conclusion of the combine coming up. I thought it was interesting, Aaron, what you mentioned about the things that you can't teach with a lot of these guys. And, with Tavondre Sweat, it's obviously weighing about 355, 360. Xavier Worthy, it's the speed. But then there's some interesting guys that, towards the back end of the Texas draft hopefuls that we don't talk a whole lot about. And for Ryan Watts, I think it's the combination of top end speed while being 6'3". You don't see that too often for guys that can run 21 plus, 22 miles per hour while being 6'3" and still playing defensive back. I know he didn't have the greatest of endings to the 2023 season, especially against Washington, but some team is going to take a chance on him because when you have that top end speed and you have that length in the defensive backfield, windows close very quickly after that. I think one team is going to look at that and say, we can teach him, we can mold him how we want. That'll be interesting. Then Christian Jones was the other one to me. How many offensive linemen in this draft do you think have a background in playing soccer? That's not a common thing for guys that are 6'6", 300 plus pounds. And so a late addition and a late kind of movement into football in his career is probably why we saw the lights take a little bit of time to come back on fully whenever you talked about what he had at Texas, because really the transformation from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 is not even close to what we saw the final product of him as a Texas Longhorn. So that's interesting. There's all sorts of little backstories and little tidbits that are go into the making and the makeup of all these draft prospects. And man, I'm excited to see how they compare, one in and one out to these drills, as you mentioned, Rod, when it comes to these alphabetical orders. Who's ahead of them? Who looks good? How can you say, everything, compares well? Funny story. My best friend growing up was Aaron Fuller. He played at Washington for 4 years, was a 4-year starter. He entered the combine. He was a wide receiver, entered the combine in 2020. And so FU LL. We'll go the first four, right? That's right behind DUVE. So he was right behind Devin Duvernay going through the drills.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was locked in, obviously, to watch Duvernay, but right behind him was, my best friend growing up. And so
That's cool.
to say that I was locked in and knew the ins and outs of what it was like to compare one guy that I'd watched for 4 straight years versus a guy that I had, played with since middle school, it's interesting because you don't see that all too often because, you most times you see a few names that from college days.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy from, Southern Alabama who's just, lucky to be there, excited to be there. But you can tell there's a bit of a drop off in terms of the ins and outs of what it's like. And I always like what you said, Rod, about being behind Nnamdi Asomugha because
oh man,
it plays a little bit of mind games, I bet.
Exactly.
Locking up right behind a guy that's 6'3", can run like the wind and has smooth hands. Now you're sitting there, it's like, oh boy, that's not gonna be an easy thing to follow up.
That's what I'm saying. They went, and I'm 5'8" coming out there. I can run pretty good. I got nice hips, but man, you see Nnamdi Asomugha out there, man. He looked like a damn gazelle out there running. Yeah. I mean, it's a different. It's just it's a different visual, and I think honestly, it hurt me a little bit. It dropped my stock a little bit going from that guy and then to Rod B. I think if I'd have had like a buffer in between a couple other guys, some dude from, just a random school, like you said.
I'm just imagining the third guy's feeling going behind not only Nnamdi Asomugha, but you as well. If I'm lining up in the 40 after seeing the two of y'all run, I'm thinking I might pull a hammy on purpose so I can do this at my pro day later on. Coach, I'm not going out there after those two. Are you kidding me?
No, man, but that's the whole point. They want it to be a competition. They want that. They want that mindset. They want someone to look at the guy in front of them, look at the guy behind them, the guys around them, and then their competitive spirit, right? The competitive sickness, it takes over, and that actually they're looking for a guy where he can intrinsically, internally, he can turn that competitive spirit into a productive performance under pressure. And not everybody can do that. Some people, they actually, that's why some people are bad test takers, right? Well, this is about the people who can perform under pressure. Not everybody can. And the NFL is all about pressure, man. It's all about showing up in the clutch. And that's what they want. And that's what the combine is trying to replicate to a certain extent.
That's right. No, well, it's like Rod Seabiscuit out there behind War Admiral. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yes, exactly. See him on the side of the eye.
Seabiscuit won, though. Seabiscuit beat him. I like that.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the schedule of the combine here on the On Texas Football Tuesday night live stream brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. We'll tell you about those great folks here coming up. But Thursday will be defensive linemen and linebackers. So you get Sweat Murphy and Jalen Ford doing their drills on field. Then Friday, you got defensive backs and tight ends. So you get to see JT Sanders, Ryan Watts. And, one of those defensive backs, Rod's will be running for that 4-2, those are always the fastest dudes.
Yeah.
And we'll see Brock Bowers and his freakishness. Saturday, of course, on, everybody's off watching. That's all the stars, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs will be doing their thing on Saturday. Sunday, offensive linemen. So, if you want to watch the big dudes run, that's going to be Sunday. They do it over 4 days. And I love how you said fourth quarter, Rod. I really do, having been to the combine a couple times now, that's a really good way to put it. It's easy in the first quarter, gets a little tougher. You get the medicals, then you got to meet the media. That's the next day, right? Where you're getting, asking all the questions. I know it wasn't the TV show like it is now when you were there, but now it's, you got a podium and you got media members from all over the country asking you questions. So you got to deal with that, especially if you're one of the big top prospects. And then the next day you got to perform. And in between, you're, pulled aside to go do interviews and called at night to come meet in the hotel room and do interviews. It really is a test. And I know it's a big television show for NFL Network, but it is an important part of the process for these guys that are looking to improve their stock.
Well,
the guys at the top of the draft don't care. The guys at the top of the draft are going to go.
Exactly. That's why you're seeing the guys at the top of the draft like, I'm not going. Marvin Harrison Jr. is like, I'm not going. I'm going. Or I'm going, but I'm only doing interviews.
That's right.
And that's it. Interviews and that maybe medical values, but I'm not performing there because they don't like the pressure cooker and you have no control, right? It's not a controlled environment. And the quarterbacks, I understand why they don't throw. You're throwing to receivers you don't even know. Throwing to some dude out there who's yeah, he's trying to run hard and trying to show out. So, but he's doing his best. But you don't know you don't know the timing of the post route with that dude. You don't know how he runs his out routes and all that kind of stuff. And everything's being overanalyzed. So I understand why they don't do it. I really do understand why some people decide, now I'm not going to the combine. I got more to lose than the game. But if you're for most of the NFL are just jabronis. They're just jags. They're just a guy. That's just Rod B. You're going to play 3.5 to 5 years and your career is going to be done. And you probably won't even sign the second contract. That's most of the NFL. That's most of the combine. That's why most of the guys have to go there and show up. The big time, high level, elite prospects, they don't have to show up. The NFL will come to them. But the guys like Rod B, you got to go. You got to go. You ain't got no choice. You got to go to the TV show.
Put up with it. I know that about it. All right, so there's your schedule for the combine. It is underway in Indianapolis. I think you'll be seeing and hearing tomorrow on our show and on Texas Football. A lot of comments from GMs and coaches who were talking today about these prospects. We'll get to see them up close. And yes, the top end guys probably won't be working out much, but the next level, got a guy like Michael Penix at quarterback, right? You're gonna have to go show, because Caleb Williams and these kind of guys are not going to be throwing. You got to go put on a show and impress some folks. It's never too early to look at next year either. Quinn Ewers will be in the same process next year. Will he throw? Is he going to go? How's that going to look? What about Kelvin Banks and these kind of guys? So excited to even project beyond this year. Hey guys, I'm going to tell you about Texas electricity ratings, but be thinking about this, because I mentioned to start the live stream tonight, we got a great question from one of our viewers about the SEC. We're 125 days away, July 1st, from the Longhorns and joining the SEC. Their last day in the Big 12 will be June 30th. There's a big party planned down on campus, and they're going to do a big, fireworks, I'm assuming, and then they're off to the SEC. Think about this. What is when you look at Texas sports, and you can go the entire athletic department and narrow it down to the power sports, which program is the closest to winning an SEC championship? And this comes from one of our viewers, a question: which program, based on sports competition, where they're at, is closest to winning the SEC in a conference championship when they get there? We'll talk about that here coming up. I do want to tell you about our friends at Texas Electricity Ratings here in a minute. But guys, right off the top of your head, do you have one that pops in, or do you need a kind of a thought? Or is there one that jumps in for you?
Man, based on the odds, I believe the odds came out just recently for the college football playoff odds for 2024 and the, I guess, conference championship odds. And I believe Texas has the second best odds to win the SEC behind Georgia.
Whoa.
From now, I'll go pull it up right now. I just saw that not too long ago. So I'm not saying it's Texas football, but I mean, yeah, Georgia's 2-1, Texas 2.5-1 from Bet Online.
The odds of teams to make the college football playoff next year came out as well, and Texas was minus 500. How about that? So
third best, right?
That's impressive. It's crazy to say that Texas football would be in that conversation anyway after the last 5 to 10 years of Texas athletics, where it's felt like every other sport has had their head on straight, and Texas was walking around with the helmet on backward for a minute with football. But I mean, they were just the number 3 team in the entire country, and they return a lot of pieces right now going into the best conference in the league. It's not out of the picture to say that, 1, they won't compete for an SEC championship, but 2, that they might win it, which is crazy. So they're certainly in the mix there. Obviously golf, tennis, track, cross country, volleyball is probably the best program in the entire country right now with back-to-back national championships. There's a lot of great sports, but man, I among the big 3, I'm leaning football right there on the men's side.
And Jeff just texted a message in volleyball. I think you got to start with volleyball because they just won the Natty, and that's against everybody, so they're there. But you're right. I mean, for football, with Georgia at home this year, the schedule, the way it lays out, to get them here, obviously you'd have to likely see them again in the SEC championship game or someone along those lines. But yes, football, we wouldn't have said that. I remember when Texas made the announcement they're going. I mean, gosh, we're not ready. We're not ready in football. What are we doing? And now it's among the conversations. Baseball, I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, that's the toughest baseball conference in America, without a doubt. Women's basketball, Vic Schaefer's got a team playing the top 3 in the country. They'll get Rory Harmon back. But you got LSU over there. You've got some dominant teams. Yeah, South Carolina's the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, that's tougher.
Yeah, Rodney Terry's team and program doesn't look close to even, in the Big 12. The SEC will be a little bit easier, but as far as winning the conference, probably not there. So, yeah, I think it's probably volleyball. Golf's a good one there, CJ, because John Fields always is loaded up with a golf team, but there are great programs like Georgia in the SEC as well. Alabama's great in the SEC. That's what's fun. Like it's a different neighborhood they're moving into in all sports, and it makes, to your point, Rod, of being at the combine, everybody's got to raise the bar. I mean, the bar is good where it's at, but going into the Southeastern Conference, it's got to go even higher to compete in every sport, and that's why they're moving there. I mean, that really is part of it to compete. But so volleyball one, is that where we're at?
I agree.
I'd go with volleyball. They're the standard right now. You talk about it in college football. It was Alabama for all those years. Kirby Smart probably took the title with no Nick Saban. He is the gold standard in college football for right now in volleyball. You can't knock being a two-time champion. I mean, back-to-back, you're now the gold or burnt orange standard, whichever shade you want to use there.
Yeah, Jared Elliott's built a hell of a program there, no doubt. All right, for all of those that are still living in Texas who are watching tonight, and in the major cities, especially where deregulated electricity is the thing, like Dallas and Houston, you understand that deregulated electricity market can be very confusing. Texas Electricity Ratings, our great sponsor tonight and a partner bringing you this, is a shopping website that lets you compare prices, read customer reviews, find a good electricity plan that fits your needs. It also filters out a lot of the gimmicky plans on websites like Power to Choose that trick customers into expensive bills that you end up with. You think it's a good plan. Next thing you know, you got these through-the-roof bills. That's not the case if you are checking out TexasElectricityRatings.com. So if you're in the market for a new electricity plan, please shop with these folks. TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF on Texas football /OTF for all of your electricity needs. And they say hook 'em. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF. Good stuff. All right, guys, so we go volleyball, we go football, baseball, by the way, playing St. John's right now. Huge series. Speaking of the SEC, this weekend's going to be a lot of fun, CJ. This team's been very impressive so far with David Pierce as the pitching coach, 6-1, but the competition, we talk about raising that bar. They go down to Houston this weekend where there'll be some sellout crowds. See LSU, Texas State, Vanderbilt over 3 nights. Yeah,
that'll be fun. I was actually at the Dish on Sunday for a little afternoon ball. Found some Dippin' Dots, so I had a hell of a time. Man, it was a fun game, and Texas ended up taking care of Cal Poly. 3rd straight wins, won the series, did not allow a run all weekend. So I think tonight in the 2nd inning, they allowed their first run in 28 and a half innings, or 28 and a third, whatever it might be. But really impressive stuff. And that's to say, going into their Sunday rotation a little bit, they allowed some hits. I think Cal Poly had about 8 or 9 hits on Sunday. But to the credit of the Texas defense, they had 3 outs that they were able to get through outfield assists and relays and plays at the plate and at third base. They really feel like there's not a sluggish start to the side of the defense right now. In my eyes, just kind of distantly observing the start to some of these games. Maybe some quicker starts would be nice to get a nice little lead. They're down 3-2 right now in the top of the 4th. So we'll see, what kind of identity this team begins to develop. But right now, you can't complain at all about the way that this pitching staff has started so far. 6-1, not too bad.
Yeah, and as I've said to Rod, I mean, the thing that was impressive, and I know they'll see better offenses than Cal Poly will, but that's a bunch of California guys, right? I mean, those are good ball players. Yeah. They played, the first weekend with San Diego, another group of California kids that, come in, planning to hit the ball. And they've done a great job. A 1.66 ERA headed into tonight. The impressive thing about last week, CJ, was the only 7 walks in 3 games, right? No free passes. They didn't hit a batter. The hits you were talking about on Sunday were the most. They gave up 9. But, man, the LBJ gave up just 2 hits and no walks on Friday. You can tell, last year it was kind of a mess, quite honestly. Pitching behind in counts, walking batters, hit batters, free passes. We're not seeing that so far. That's David Pierce has seemingly gotten his point across that we're going to pitch to contact. We're going to use our defense. We're going to pitch ahead. And so far, execution's been good. We'll see where it goes when they start facing, the likes of, as we'll see in the next 3 this weekend, then the Texas A&M next Tuesday, and then of course Texas Tech in Lubbock coming here. Red Raiders come here to start conference play. 10 days starting March 1st will tell a lot about where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said about the no walks has kind of been my biggest takeaway so far. I mentioned the defense was good, but the pitching staff not allowing any walks or at least minimal walks early in the year is very encouraging, especially when you kind of consider that LeBaron Johnson is very good. Like he is your number one, but in terms of where he stands comparatively to previous ones that Texas has had, I wouldn't say he's in that dominant fold just yet. I think he might have the potential to get there, but he's certainly not a Nolan Kingham. He's not in that conversation just yet of what we've seen with a Bryce Elder, even of past Texas teams. But to the point you made of not allowing free bases, you can now work your way into that conversation despite not having the best stuff, just by eliminating the free passes and the walks that allow guys to get on base. Because, baseball is a funky sport. The more opportunities you give to the opposing team, the more odds you are to see something weird happen, like a ball hit a bag or a pass ball or an error, whatever it might be. Baseball is odd. Things happen very peculiarly. It's a weird deal, but the more that you can minimize those mistakes and, kind of stay on top of what you can control, like giving your defense an opportunity to work, you're going to see success more times than not. So credit to David Pierce and that pitching staff, because that's a big struggle for a lot of teams early in the year. It's really impressive. Speaking of which, Texas just backpicked the runner on first from the catcher. So it's more of the same. It's really impressive stuff.
Yeah, they've had last several years, and Troy Tulowitzki back helping with that defense and the fielding. They're gonna field at an elite level. And you're right, they just got to pick off at first. After that was a hit batter, by the way, that reached first base, got hit in the foot. Tonight, the middle of the week starters are struggling a little bit with their control. But you're right. I mean, it's baseball. You limit base runners. You play great defense. You don't give extra outs. You don't put guys on base. With this talent, you have a chance to win a lot of ball games, especially with the offense they do have, which will come on even more as they move forward. Hey, I know, guys, you CJ, you were mentioning some recruiting notes we'll get to coming up. But you saw an Isaiah Bond tweet today that I thought was interesting that we can pick up and talk about. Spring practice now, 3 weeks from tomorrow. They'll fire up spring practice. There it is from Matthew Isaiah Bond. Make winning a habit, not a goal. Hashtag hook 'em. Guys, your thoughts? Isaiah Bond coming in here as a guy we just talked about. Quinn Ewers, Kelvin Banks as guys that can be high picks next year if they perform as expectations go. Isaiah Bond specifically left Alabama after he came from the state of Georgia out of high school as a track star, speedster, but a productive player at Alabama. Now, kind of like A.D. Mitchell, coming to a more of a passing offense. He's looking to make a mark and maybe be the wide receiver one in this Texas offense.
Yeah, I love this. It's tremendous. We've talked about the culture that Texas has built under Sarkisian. Roshan and Bijan carrying the flag first. Jordan Whittington, a number of those guys, kind of carrying the torch after that. Now you're looking at what's going to happen with a new year. And each year, obviously you sit there and wonder who's going to take control. Now with the portal, you're going to add a couple of faces that haven't been a part of your program. They're going to jump in expecting to be a big contributing piece of the puzzle. For that to be an idea, and I think Matthew Golden had a number of tweets like this whenever he first committed in December. You're getting guys who are expected to be on the field, but also have that same mindset of what it takes to win at the highest level. We've talked about in the past, Amari Nyblack and Isaiah Bond coming from Alabama, two guys that were in the college football playoff. They know what it takes to get there. There was a standard at Alabama that they are used to, and they are, expected to continue in their paths to the NFL draft eventually. That's going to be the standard that they take and move over here to Texas while assimilating to the current culture that Texas has instilled and is currently running at in the moment. I love this because it's all about winning whenever you get to the SEC. It's all about winning whenever you're at Texas. Now you're starting to see that mindset. About 6-7 months away from first kick? I mean, this is great. It's great stuff to see this on February 27th in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, the culture that Sark is establishing, I've talked to some of the players about this in the Third Longhorns podcast that we do. So shout out to those guys. And, I'm just kind of paraphrasing and summarizing, but you can tell they're being taught that what culture means. And I think it is intentional that he used habit, because the way they reference culture is that, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? Essentially you getting up in the morning, how you attack the day, whether that be about class or whether it be about your workouts, whether it be about relationships, how you treat others, respect to your teammates, all that. they're teaching that culture is about habits, everyday habits, because you have to be obsessed with the process and not the product. Because football is a sport where you practice more than you play. The work you put in, you're gonna be putting in way more work in the off season, in practice, in film study, in the lab, right, in the position room, breaking down your technique. You're gonna be doing way more of that than you are playing. So you have to become obsessed with the process, and the process is about, creating positive, productive, constructive habits every day, and devoting yourself to those habits of working out twice a day, about making sure you get in the film room, making sure that you devote time to your academics, all that kind of stuff. So the way they talk about it is culture is about habits. So I'm not surprised that Isaiah Bunn comes into that culture, and now he's talking about making winning a habit, not a goal, because they talk about culture as being habitual in the everything.
One of my favorite parts. Sorry, Roger, keep going.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, one of my favorite parts of this part of the year in recruiting is, I'm out at workouts, the early morning workouts at a number of these schools, and no two workout is the same when I bounce around from school to school, especially whenever you start going to some of the upper end programs in the area. You really get to see why that's the reason. And these programs aren't always littered with D1 guys. That does help. I'm not going to lie. But when you start seeing a lot of guys that look just like me, you start to wonder why they keep making deep runs in the playoffs. And it's because of the offseason workouts. Each team takes on their identity right now. And before spring ball comes and really starts, I guess, yelling, making it noise, whatever you want to say to kind of put out what their personality is behind closed doors, what it is as a team.
Yep.
And so this is the start of it, is attacking each day, like you said, like a competition to win the day. I know a lot of teams have that as their slogan, but you get to see which type of programs really start to take that kind of personality trait of, we're not going to beat ourselves. You're going to have to beat us man to man in the trenches on Saturdays or Sundays or whenever it might be, whenever we line up across from you. And I think that's really, really something that has stood out to me so far whenever I'm bouncing around. So this was another thing. Isaiah Bonsby, I kind of went down that line of Torrey Becton's squad is really instilling a carry-on of what we saw from a year ago with Texas, getting close, but not close enough.
It's good stuff.
Yep. Yeah, we've seen it, no doubt, in college football the last decade. I mean, the programs that combine the culture with depth and high-end talent, that's Georgia, that's Alabama, that's Ohio State, that's Clemson, and those are the teams that have dominated college football. Texas trying to get there and took a big step last year, see if they can continue it, because the complacency, the other C word, can't happen. But Isaiah Bond, Rod, you've seen him on film. You watched him at Alabama. He can be the A.D. Mitchell of this year, right, where he comes in from a SEC power program, but even performs better. I mean, he compares favorably speed-wise to Xavier Worthy. Scored a touchdown against Texas, caught the big touchdown against Auburn in the Iron Bowl to save the season and get them to the Final Four, or at least to the SEC championship game. Isaiah Bonds could be a special talent in this offense with a lot of speed.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a true, wide receiver one for Texas, true go-to guy. He actually, I think his track time actually is faster tracked than Xavier Worthy was. I think Xavier Worthy ran his 10.6 as a sophomore or something like that, freakish. I'm not sure when Isaiah Bond ran his 10.51, but either way, I mean, you're talking about elite high-end speed for both of those guys. And yeah, I think he's an explosive receiver. I mean, I think it's a guy that honestly next year's draft you could be talking about him in the first 2 rounds as one of those high-level receivers. I think he's got that kind of ceiling. And in Sark's offense, it's such a receiver-friendly offense. Receivers want to play in this offense. And that, whether you're talking about recruiting high school receivers or you're talking about through the transfer portal, it's, Sark's offense, it is really productive for the wide receiver position. And he seems to be able, within his offense, to be able to find ways to scheme guys open. Even though it's, you would think at this point, that teams would be able to take away weapons away from Sark, but he's really brilliant in that way of being able to scheme guys open. He's done it time and time again. I mean, Xavier Worthy, I think, is the only wide receiver of the top wide receivers in this draft class that's had 100 plus targets in each year he's at Texas. I mean, he can find ways to force feed the football to players, and I think that's attractive to wide receivers. That no, he's gonna get me the football. He's not gonna let a defense take me away, and Sark doesn't do that. So I think you're gonna continue to be able to get good wide, and you get good quarterbacks. Right, wide receivers want to play with big time QBs. You keep that QB room stacked the way it is with 5-star talent like Quinn Ewers is gonna be a first round pick, and then a Manning behind him. You're going to be able to also get good wide receivers. And I think it also is, it's symbiotic. Both of those positions are elevated in Sark's offense. And so, I mean, they can continue to feed each other. You're going to get good wide receivers because you keep great quarterbacks. You're going to get good quarterbacks because they want to throw to great wide receivers and they all want to play in his offense. So I think that's something that's just going to be of a benefit to Sark. It just continuing for years to come because his offense is attractive and aesthetically pleasing to the masses, but also to the players.
Mm-hmm. Well, case in point, we just talked about the combine and the draft. Next year, Quinn Ewers likely, if he has a good year, to be a first-round draft pick. Mm-hmm. Program, Texas has had 2 first-round drafted quarterbacks ever, Bobby Lane and Vince Young.
Crazy. They
could have 2 in the next 3 draft cycles, like literally. So
wow.
If you're a Longhorn fan watching tonight, pinch yourself. Like that really could be when you're talking about Quinn and then a Manning. And then, whatever's beyond that. They've had 2 all time. They could have 2 in a 3 or 4 year period, which is, yes, that's going to attract wide receivers. That's going to attract skill players. And obviously, if you can protect them with the offensive line that they've built, it's going to be a lot of fun.
And not a coincidence, guys, that this is happening. And I'm not criticizing, but it's happening during the NIL transfer portal era. I mean, That makes it easier to get big time quarterbacks. Texas got as many sugar daddies as any school in the country, directives and collectives. That's how you got Quinn Ewers. He wanted to be at Texas, but you still got him via the transfer portal and probably got a nice NIL deal along with it. That helps, right? That's the big part of it. Now that's not why you got the Manning. That was all on culture and give Sark credit because the First Family of Football gave you the stamp of approval and the check there. But that helps. And that helped that even your wide receivers, right? You got Isaiah Bond, transfer portal. Look at all your receivers now, transfer portal. That helps a lot. I think that's a big part of it too.
100%. And money to be made and a good place to be and a good offense to play in with a good culture. Not a lot not to like. It's hard to negatively recruit Texas right now, as you guys have talked about quite a lot. CJ, I know you and Jerry Hamilton were talking this morning about some recruiting notes, and you've been out to the high schools and about and around. And what's the latest? What can you? I know it's red meat for our viewers. What's going on the recruiting trail for now and for the future?
Yeah, quite a bit, but I'll be quick here. The first is 3 new offers were extended from the Texas staff. Late yesterday, the first going to Adonis Curry, a 6'2.5" cornerback out of Lancaster, California, has 10.6 speed right now. So talk about length and speed combined. That's a kid that Texas is hoping to get on campus eventually. Go up to Georgia next, where Texas is trying to get more active in the defensive line recruiting down there. Isaiah Gibson out of Warner Robins, Georgia, defensive edge, true outside edge prospect there. Moving up to Alabama, but more to the interior, is Auburn defensive line commit Malik Autry, who I actually got to speak with just a little bit last night. He is hoping to make it to Texas. He's been committed to Auburn for a full calendar year now, which is something that is worth mentioning. He's about 6'5.5", 320 pounds. So he's a big boy. He's going to be your true nose or your 3-eye on the interior of the defensive line. Big boy, and Auburn has really knocked it out of the park when it comes to defensive line recruiting in the 2025 class. So those are the 3 most recent offers. And then we have some official visit news. Jerry Hamilton over at, obviously on Texas Football has been able to confirm a number of official visitors for June 21st through 23rd. 2 of them on the offensive line: Jackson Christian of Port Neches Groves and Jonte Newman out of Bridgeland, high target prospects for the Texas Longhorns, and Cade Phillips out of Hightower, the safety or the cornerback, for June 21st through 23rd as well. A lot going on. I know Jerry was on the road today. I was at Bastrop High this morning as well. They got a couple dudes down there now out in Bastrop. The first is 2026 Tiki Hola, defensive lineman, and I was thoroughly impressed with what he brought to the table today during workouts. About 6'3", 280 at the moment, but the flexibility is superb. Skinny ankles, but a very firm lower body. He is a very impressive prospect. He visited Texas for the junior day, has yet to really talk with Kenny Baker a whole lot, but did get to speak with Sarkisian and Johnny Nansen, who, as we know, has the Polynesian ties, and the two of them were able to hit it off a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. No visits or anything planned like that for the spring. But the other guy I wanted to mention was 2027 quarterback Weston Nielsen. And it's not too often that you hear about a quarterback out of this area that's not at a Lake Travis or a Westlake, but Bastrop's got a guy out in right now. First offer came in September from Oregon. So to tell you a little bit about how schools are starting to evaluate him, he's since picked up 9 offers since the beginning of January. Right now he's sitting at 10, about 6'2", 175 right now. Started at last 8 or 9 games. For Bastrop as a true freshman. He is looking very impressive in workouts. Sarkisian made Bastrop his first stop of the open contact period in January. And then AJ Milwee came by 2 weeks later to watch him throw in a workout. So we'll see just how things are able to progress there. He was also on campus for a game last year and a junior day on January 20th. So Texas is well aware of Weston Nielsen, and we know that they're peculiar with their quarterback recruiting. So we'll be keeping a close eye on Weston Nielsen, that's for sure.
Good stuff. And you guys will be doing the coffee and football tomorrow morning. Here we go. Justin, appreciate that super chat. What player on the current roster y'all most looking forward to in the combine in the future? There we go.
Ooh.
That's a good one. Nice job. Thank you, Justin. Combine in the future. Most looking forward to seeing.
I've got Anthony Hill. I think this is a kid that I saw run a 4.67 laser his junior year, the spring of his junior year in high school at 227 pounds. I can only imagine what 4 or 5 additional years of weight training, speed training, and all that can do for him. Not only in the 40, but the 5, 10, 5, the shuttles, everything that go on. I mean, Anthony Hill, when you talk about freak of natures, he's a 5-star guy that fits that bill very well. I cannot wait to see him in the combine.
That's good. That's a good one. On the roster right now, just the freaks of nature. I'll go with, Colin Simmons. I guess I guess I could say that. I mean, that's way down the line, but that dude will probably put on the show just because he's a physical freak, and that's what the combine's about, right? It's about the guys who have the highest physical athletic upside. It doesn't make you a great football player just because you show out at the combine. So you got to go with the guys who are the most physically gifted. Ryan Wingo is another guy that could be that'll be good. It could be a freak at the combine. That guy's you watch him run and you see the combination of size and speed, and it looks different in person. It does. You just don't see that combination very often. So he's a guy I think that can show out physically and just be a freak. Yeah,
these 5-star kids. The good stuff right there. Appreciate Ryan with the question there. Justin, I believe, with the question. I'm still thinking, I want to see Kelvin Banks next year to see how he does. I know you just said big guys that run. Kelvin Banks and his nimble feet. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is an easy answer. But the winner is Arch Manning, right? You're going to want to see Arch Manning at the combine in a couple of years. That's going to be speaking of TV shows. That's the TV show of the TV show. When Arch Manning rolls to the combine, because he's already the Taylor Swift of college athletics right now, getting played. What's going to happen when he actually has a season or two under his belt and he shows up in Indianapolis? That is going to be fascinating stuff. Speaking of quarterbacks, guys, I'm sure you've seen it as we and we'll take your super chats. We'll take your questions if you've got them here as we push up. It's 3-3, by the way, over at UFC Dish-Falk Field, 4th inning. Texas couple runners aboard, 3-3 with St. John's. But ESPN put out their list of the best quarterbacks in college football since 2000. Best quarterbacks in college football since 2000. Number 1 on the list was Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma. Vince Young was 3rd, by the way, on this list. We can go on down, but you guys can find the list and look at it. But who's, for your money, in 23 seasons of football since 2000, who's the best quarterback? And obviously, this is one of those things you're going to define best season, best career, best whatever. But for you, who was the best quarterback in college football since 2000?
Ooh, that's good.
Baker was good. I don't think he was the best. I'd look at a guy like Cam Newton.
Right? Don't you have to have a championship to be number one?
I would argue that, but I mean, Cam Newton, to do what he did in the SEC and then to win a national championship in 1 year of play with a team that really didn't have a number of NFL guys on either side of the ball, that to me, I'm not a Cam Newton guy. You know, now I'm not going to find him at a 7-on-7 tournament and start talking ill to him. Let me be honest, but I have to, you know, tip my cap and just say what he did there in that season was special. He was unstoppable and was truly tremendous. Rick with a great comment. Joe Burrow, arguably the greatest season a quarterback's ever had, an offense has ever had, has been you know in that conversation too. But I'm going with Cam Newton there.
All right, Rod. I know you supported Cam. Somebody just said VY. The argument for VY is it was, you know, Rose Bowl, and he left early. If he had come back, I mean, they're going to win again, and he might win the Heisman, and then it would be no debate, right? There'd be no question. He may be the most accomplished player of all time. You know, you got to put Tim Tebow in the conversation, I think, just for what he accomplished, right? Won 2 national championships, you know, led the SEC in rushing touchdowns, the leadership, all that comes with that position. Joe Burrow is a good one, but what's your money on, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the criteria, right? If you're going off overall accomplishments, yeah, Baker would be in there because he played for a longer period of time and was a Heisman finalist, you know, all those times. But I think if you're just going off most impressive achievement, I think it is. I think Cam Newton, I've said that before, and Longhorn fans don't like it. I think what Cam Newton did was more impressive than what VY did. It just was. Guys, it just was. Cam Newton, he only played with one player that ended up taking an NFL snap, and that was an offensive lineman that got drafted. VY had talent all around him, first and second round talent everywhere. So I agree in terms of that most impressive. Joe Burrow is in that conversation too. Yeah, VY's, you know, he's got to be considered a top 3 to 5 player in that position. But like you said, then there's Tim Tebow that also has to be considered because Tim Tebow was kind of a phenomenon all in itself. In terms of his impact on college football. So, yeah, that depends on the criteria. But, I mean, I think there are several guys that can be considered to be, you know, the top guy in that conversation.
I'll ask one more here, or I want to flip the question to something different, but I'll mention Matt Leinart. You know, if they get that first down at the Rose Bowl against Texas on 4th and a yard, that guy wins 3 in a row. That guy wins 3 championships. I know that team was loaded, but, you know, championships matter. And he was pretty damn good for the 23 years we're talking about right now. I think for the single season, I think it's either Vince or Joe Burrow, career-wise. Which, Rod, you lead on this as a defensive player. Which quarterback since 2000 was the toughest to defend? The toughest to defend as a defense. Which one put most pressure on a defense?
It was probably VY.
Yeah,
it was probably VY in that respect. Yeah, because the dual threat element of it. I mean, that's Cam's probably in that conversation too. You know, the quarterbacks that make you defend them as an elite runner and as an elite passer. I mean, that's, to me, as a defender, that is the ultimate equalizer, right? Those are the teams that were taking down Nick Saban at the apex and the zenith of his dynasty, were those guys that could run and throw. All right, those were the kind of guys that could do. What you were talking about, a Johnny Manziel then, or you're talking about a Cam Newton back then, those were the guys, because there's really no defensive game plan or any defensive structure that really can hold them, because you have to defend multiple plays in one. You got to defend the first play where he drops back, and then you got to defend the second reaction play in the scramble drill, and then when he decides to become a runner, if he's an elite runner, you got to defend that too. Imagine defending that against Cam Newton, a guy who's bigger than 90% of NFL defenders, and trying to tackle that guy in the open field after the scramble drill. Like, it's really, really tough. Or VY, that long-legged gazelle out there who takes up, 6-7 yards per stride, and he's out there giving you the okie doke, right? Out in the open field. That's tough. It's those guys that have always been the toughest to defend. So I think the dual threats of that list, Tim Tebow, I guess, should be in that conversation as well. Those were the toughest to defend.
I wanted to bring up Lamar Jackson. Because VY and with Cam Newton and VY, I think they have that dual threat ability to them, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're in the same class of Lamar Jackson. What we saw from him, 4,900 total yards was the second most in a season ever, I believe. And I mean, he basically doubled those, or, improved on those stats the year after. The wins obviously don't support his case for that argument, but in terms of toughest overall quarterback to defend, when you have a quarterback back there, I mean, like we saw it with Mike Vick too. When you have a quarterback back there that can sling the rock pretty well and still beat you with a 4.4 or 4.5, 40-yard dash. Kyler Murray's in that conversation too, though we didn't see him necessarily put up those gaudy numbers like Lamar, I would say. But man, I can't imagine there's a tougher guy to defend than Lamar. And going back to Matt Leinart, I think what hurts him is, I mean, he had a Heisman winner in his backfield already. You talk about guys that didn't have a whole lot of help.
Yeah.
That's and it looks like Texas just hit a grand slam.
Hey,
Flores. Yep, Jalen.
Yeah, yards going nuts. I love it.
Well, and you mentioned a name that I think we have to put on that list is Michael Vick. I mean, Michael Vick he and Lamar Jackson were like video games on a football field, without a doubt. But man, it's a good debate, healthy debate. And by the way, Jaden Daniels with the numbers this year with LSU. I mean, he's Lamar Jackson-like.
Yeah, he is.
Caleb Williams could be in the conversation, but I just think for me, accomplishment on top of eyeball test. So a Heisman, a championship, and the performance. That's where a Joe Burrow. That's where Tim Tebow maybe separate a little bit because they accomplished all of it. But you're right. It's a good debate because it's the most important position in sports, and I think ESPN put that out because it's obviously combine time. We're talking quarterbacks and the inexact science, Rod, as you know, of how these guys will then translate to the next level because you just never know. You can't. I saw an article with Kurt Warner talking about, man, the college game is so different than the pro game. People try to figure out why it's so hard to quantify and figure out who's going to be good at what level and why Brock Purdy or Tom Brady or these guys make it when the first picks don't. It's just a different game. You got to make throws, and you played in both, Rod. I mean, the throws you have to be able to make, the anticipation at the next level is. I don't think most fans really understand how different college to pro football is at that position.
Yep, the windows they close up a lot quicker, right? And you need a quarterback that has that anticipatory element in their game where they know where the receiver is supposed to be, and that throwing to where the receiver is supposed to be. That also, I mean, a lot of what was open in college isn't open in the NFL. And a lot of quarterbacks have a tough time with that transition. And some quarterbacks figure it out. It's like, okay, the windows are going to be a lot smaller. I got to get the ball out a lot quicker. And I have to anticipate where that receiver is going to be within, the structure of the offense. And sometimes those are sight adjustments. Receivers, they have sight adjustments based on the defender. They're running different routes and option routes. So it can be tough. I mean, I think for the most part, these scouts have tried to turn the quarterback evaluation into a science, and it's not a science. It's an art form. And they're really uncomfortable with that because, art is something that can be interpreted in different ways, right? Art can be constructed in a lot of different forms, and that's the quarterback position. It ain't all going to look the same. Got to have the hand size. Hand size equates to this. Oh, what about his height? He's got to be this tall. Oh man, I like the quarterbacks that have this measurement and that measurement. Oh, what about the Wonderlic score and the S2 cognition test? The truth is they have no idea what the hell they're doing when it comes to quarterback. The late great Bill Walsh said it best. He said very few people know how to coach the quarterback position, and even fewer know how to evaluate the quarterback position. And it's truer now than it's ever been. And that will always be the truth about quarterback because it is not a science. And that makes scouts uncomfortable because science is what? They're results that you can replicate over and over and over again. That's the scientific method. I do this, I get this formula, these elements, and I can equal a great quarterback. It don't work that way. It's easier to do that with some positions, right? You look at a D lineman. Hey, if you got this measurements, the guy's this tall, he runs a 5-10-5 in this way, he can run the 3-cone drill. It's easier to predict those measurables will translate to success, not at quarterback, because it's actually at one of those positions that's more about the immeasurables. It's more about what things you can't quantify than it is about the things that you can measure and the things you can quantify. That's what the position is all about. It's all about the competitive spirit. It's all about how quickly a quarterback can process a defense and pre-snap diagnosis and the post-snap adjustments. Those are all things that you're not going to really, you can pick up more watching film, but you can't measure it and you're not going to figure it out at a combine. Ain't no damn way. That's why Brock Purdy can be Mr. Irrelevant and still end up, being a Super Bowl quarterback, all right, starting in the Super Bowl, because nobody knows the hell they're doing. The 49ers don't know either, guys. They drafted Trey Lance, and they thought, all right, we're going to trade away our future of our franchise because Trey Lance is going to be the guy. Turns out he ain't the guy, and that's one of the smartest human beings in terms of football now that I've ever known. They know what the hell they're doing, but at quarterback, they don't know what the hell they're doing, all right? Even Andy Reid will admit he didn't like Patrick Mahomes at first. All right. Brett Veach, who was like an assistant executive at the time there, who he brought over from Philly because he liked him. He was the one that looked up Patrick Mahomes, was like, man, you better check this guy out. I'm telling you, he's the real deal. And it took Andy Reid some time getting, blasted with text messages and videos of Patrick Mahomes where he said, you know what? I actually do like this kid. He's actually showing me something. He's pretty good. But we watched Patrick Mahomes there at Texas Tech for 3 years. Anybody thought he was going to be the GOAT? Anybody? Hell no. None of y'all. None of us. Nobody. Nobody thought Tom Brady in the 6th round was going to be the GOAT. Otherwise, they'd have drafted him earlier. Guys, nobody knows what the hell they're doing when it comes to quarterback. They're just throwing blank in the wall and seeing if it sticks. And the only franchise really that's figured it out are the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are the one that figured it out. The Green Bay Packers have gone from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers and look like Jordan Love can put the cape on too. Ladies and gentlemen, they're the only ones. Everybody else has struggled with it. And I think it's, like I said, it's not a science, man. It's an art form.
Rod, you mentioned the Packers, and what they do so well is making sure they don't rush quarterbacks onto the field. My biggest gripe with them, I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan. And so when I saw that they took a quarterback when he was coming off of an MVP level season, I'm sitting there losing my mind thinking, you have an opportunity to win another ring with him. Why not go get a guy that can, help you win currently? But to their credit, allowing Aaron Rodgers to sit behind Favre and allowing Jordan Love to sit behind Rodgers, now you're able to have them seamlessly move into a consistent level of play that preceded them. And we saw it a little bit with Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith in Kansas City as well. I think the quarterback science not so much relates to what it is of those players as players, how well they can throw a football. I think for the most part, if you put them on a field with just route, they'll be able to hit 9 times out of 10 a crosser, a deep pass, and a post. They should be able to hit those type of guys. What changes the situation they go to and the scheme around them is obviously big. And if you're able to sit back for a year or even 2 in the case of Jordan Love, by the time that you're able to fully go into a team or a season as your own, now you're a leg up of what you would have been if you were Zach Wilson or a couple guys that, kind of flamed out as early draft picks, just being thrown into the fire. I mean, just look at every Cleveland Brown quarterback ever drafted for the most part. It's been unfortunate what they've done, but because they've been in such a dire position up top of we got to find a guy and he's got to go fix it right away, none of those guys have been able to flourish.
Yeah. No, the worst organization in football when it comes to quarterbacks got to be Chicago Bears. So you're right. Some organizations almost seem cursed when it comes to quarterbacks. I think I'll go back to Ron Wolf, one of the GMs. I believe he's a Hall of Fame GM for the Green Bay Packers. Said I would draft a quarterback every year if they let me. The truth is, you should just keep drafting quarterbacks. You should draft one every other year or so, whether you draft them high or you draft them in the middle rounds or you draft them late. Wherever they are on your board, you should draft one. Remember, hell, Kyle Shanahan's coaches and execs didn't really want him to draft Brock Purdy. He insisted, like, no, I need a quarterback. Should always be drafting quarterbacks. And if not, you're going to miss an opportunity to potentially upgrade that quarterback, right? Philadelphia Eagles did it. Everybody thought, oh, he drafted Jalen Hurts too high. That's crazy. Drafted in the 2nd round. Well, worked out because Carson Wentz didn't work out the way they thought. Right? That's because you got to keep drafting quarterbacks. Yeah, they originally drafted Nick Foles, and they didn't win a Super Bowl with him initially, but he left, came back, and then they won the Super Bowl with him. Guys, Tom Brady. had already won his Super Bowl, and after that, Bill Belichick drafted 9 quarterbacks. And getting back to your point about Aaron Rodgers, sometimes psychologically, you're drafting quarterbacks behind your QB because you want them to be uncomfortable. You pissed off Aaron Rodgers to the point where he won an MVP. He was so damn pissed off and motivated. Hell, Bill Belichick knows the psyche of Tom Brady. Tom Brady is at his best when he's uncomfortable, when he doesn't think his spot is locked down. That's all the way back to his Michigan days, right? When he's competing with Drew Henson. So psychologically, we'll keep drafting quarterbacks. Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. Hell, we drafting quarterbacks in the 5th and the 4th round. He'll be paranoid about those guys taking his spot. Are they going to be the next Tom Brady? So I think there are a lot of different reasons to be drafting quarterbacks. It's just a good organizational habit to have.
Yep. And recruiting them. Recruiting them if you're Sark.
And recruiting them, yes.
All right, guys. Good times as usual on the Texas Football Tuesday live stream presented by our friends at Texas Electricity Ratings. Check them out at texaselectricityratings.com/OTF. If you're in one of those deregulated areas, Dallas, Houston, you're in the state of Texas, you got to be checking it out. You don't want to be fooled by those gimmicky plans. You want to be in the right place for your electricity. You get it right, you can save yourself a lot of money and hassle. You get it wrong, you know the opposite of that for sure. In Houston or Dallas, make sure you're checking out texaselectricityratings.com/OTF. Bringing you our Tuesday live stream tonight. Good stuff on the combine. CJ with some great recruiting notes. Rod with the passionate conversation about quarterbacks and where we're going. Next year at this time, guys, we'll be talking about Quinn Ewers at the combine, which will be. Let's finish on this note. Speaking of the combine and what you just talked about, guys, quarterbacks, what's the number one thing Quinn Ewers has to improve on if he's going to be that 1-1 quarterback? What's the number one thing in your mind between now and next April? If he's going to be the first quarterback drafted or one of the top, picks, what's the number one thing he's got to get better at?
Oof.
I'm going to say I'll
go opposite of you, Rod. So wherever you go, I'll go. I'll make sure we're not doubling up here.
Okay, well, I'll and I think this is one that we've brought up before. I want to see him get deeper into his progressions of plays. Right, there are a lot of first read kind of wide window throws that he's amazing. I think he's the best in the country at it. No joke. I'm serious. I think when you scheme open a throw and it's a first read throw for him, his touch is amazing. The ball placement, the accuracy, he puts the right amount of velo on it. He's great in that regard when he knows where exactly the football is supposed to be going pre-snap. But when he's got to go through progressions, go through the first progression, get to the second. We're seeing him become erratic sometimes in his footwork. At times, he, instead of sensing the pressure, he will see the pressure. He starts reacting to the pressure. Remember Michael Penix in the pocket, how he sensed the pressure and move ever so slightly around, manipulate the pocket, right? Maneuver in the pocket. I want to see him do more of that and get to that second and third progression rather than scrambling out of the pocket or rather than the quick, easy check down after the first read. Get to that second and even buy some time and get to the third progression down there and see if we can, through maneuvering in the pocket, buy enough time, and he can do that because he's athletic enough to get deeper into these progression reads. I think that's what NFL scouts want to see from him, and still be accurate, and still have really good footwork, still have great mechanics throwing the football. That's the next step for him. That's the next step for him in terms of being able to put the cape on and be that top franchise QB for me.
Yeah, I like that. I think we can all agree that there's a continued progression and development when it comes to read after read to check down at quarterbacks. We'll see. I would hope a little bit more of an improvement in year 3 for Quinn. To me, it's pocket awareness in the sense that when it feels like Quinn is under pressure, instead of taking those self sacks that we saw a few times in 2023, finding ways to kind of elude the pocket, get downfield. We saw him run a little bit more for the first time in his career, but now getting a sense of extending a plays rather than giving himself up. I think he'll be a little bit more willing to do that with an extra year of gaining weight this year, where last year was him losing weight and feeling maybe a little frailer in the pocket than what he was when he came in at about 209, 210, playing right around 200 or 198 or whatever he was. Probably didn't feel good getting hit by a couple of those 300-pound guys. But if he can add a couple more pounds and feel like he can evade some of the big bodies up front, I'd like to see him just have a little bit more pocket awareness and not take some of those self-sacks that we've seen in the past.
That's great, TJ. And because that goes back to something else we need to see, TJ. We need to see Quinn make it through an entire season. NFL scouts want to see that. That's So sack avoidance, if that's what you're talking about, which is a underrated skill for quarterbacks. They need to start keeping track of it like a stat. Because I would love to. Sack avoidance to me is big. Michael Penix was amazing at it. Patrick Mahomes is amazing at it. I love that. Sack avoidance. That's kind of what I got from what you're saying there, CJ. We need to see more of that from him.
All right, guys. Awesome stuff as usual on a Tuesday night. Thank you to Texas Electricity Ratings. Thanks to all the super chats and conversation we've had. It's good stuff. Combine this weekend. Remember, Thursday you got D-line and linebackers. Friday will be cornerbacks and tight ends. So JT Sanders and Ryan Watts. Or Saturday, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Sunday will be the offensive linemen. And we'll be talking about it more, obviously, on Texas football into next week. And, of course, next Tuesday, we'll have a full recap on the Texas Tuesday live stream here on Texas football. CJ, you and Jerry and the crew tomorrow morning with Bobby. Coffee and football at 8 o'clock. What's on tap?
Man, a lot more recruiting. Jared will go deep in depth on when it comes to the recruiting notes that I briefly touched on tonight. Obviously, a little bit more primer on the NFL draft, and Bobby will have some good tidbits on what he reported earlier this week on team news as well. So should be a great show tomorrow morning. I'm also hitting the road, heading down south to San Antonio, so should have some good updating recruiting updates. From my trip down to San Antonio. Should be a good week.
No doubt, bud. All right, guys. Awesome stuff. We will certainly, Rod and I'll be on tomorrow morning on the Horn, 6 o'clock in the morning till 11. Got a lot of good sound from the Combine and all that's coming on there. And we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Remember, 125 days to joining of the SEC. 3 weeks tomorrow. 3 weeks tomorrow is when the first spring practice begins. 3 weeks from today is the UT Pro Day down at the 40 acres where the Longhorns will go through their drills for the NFL scouts who will descend, I should say, upon Austin. So the calendar continues to move forward. Guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks to everybody. Thank you to Matthew, who made this thing happen tonight, and all the On Texas football crew. Hook 'em, guys. Have a good night.
Have a good night.